Good morning and welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you joining me. We're currently reading 2 Samuel. We're going to continue in just a moment. But first, Father, as I read and receive your word, may it deeply be rooted in me, so when difficulty comes, it will be your word that encourages and strengthens me. Amen. Chapter 18, Absalom's defeat and death. David now appointed generals and captains to lead his troops. 1/3 were placed under Joab, 1/3 under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and 1/3 under Ittai the Gittite. The king told his troops, "I am going out with you." But his men objected strongly. "You must not go," they urged. "If you have to turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troops. They will be looking only for you. You are worth 10,000 of us, and it is better that you stay here in the city and send us help if we need it." "If you think that's the best plan, I'll do it," the king finally agreed. So he stood at the gate of the city as all the divisions of troops passed by. And the king gave his command to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, "For my sake, deal gently with young Absalom." And all the troops heard the king give this order to his commanders. So the battle began in the forest of Ephraim, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. There was a great slaughter, and 20,000 men laid down their lives that day. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. During the battle, Absalom came unexpectedly upon some of David's men. He tried to escape on his mule, but as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great oak, his head got caught. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air. One of David's men saw what had happened and told Joab, "I saw Absalom dangling in a tree." "What?" Joab demanded. "You saw him there and didn't kill him? I'd have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." "I wouldn't do it for 1,000 pieces of silver," the man replied. "We all heard the king say to you, and Abishai and Ittai, 'For my sake, please don't harm young Absalom.' And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, the king have certainly found out who did it. You yourself would be the first to abandon me." "Enough of this nonsense," Joab said. Then he took 3 daggers and plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangled there from the oak, still alive. 10 of Joab's young armor bearers then surrounded Absalom and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. They threw Absalom's body into a deep pit in the forest and piled a great heap of stones over it, and the army of Israel fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the king's valley, for he had said, "I have no son to carry on my name." He named the monument after himself, and it is known as Absalom's monument to this day. David mourns Absalom's death. Then Zadok, son of Ahimaaz, said, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord had saved him from his enemy Absalom." "No," Joab told him, "it wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You can be my messenger some other time, but not today." Then Joab said to the man from Cush, "Go tell the king what you have seen." The man bowed and ran off. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab. "Whatever happens, please let me go too." "Why should you go, my son?" Joab replied. "There will be no reward for you." "Yes, but let me go anyway," he begged. Joab finally said, "All right, go ahead." Then Ahimaaz took a shortcut across the plain of the Jordan and got to Mahanaim ahead of the man from Cush. While David was sitting at the city gate, the watchman climbed to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked, he saw a lone man running toward them. He shouted the news down to David, and the king replied, "If he is alone, he has news." As the messenger came closer, the watchman saw another man running toward them. He shouted down, "Here comes another one." The king replied, "He also will have news." "The first man runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok," the watchman said. "He is a good man and comes with good news," the king replied. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "All is well." He bowed low with his face to the ground and said, Blessed be the Lord your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against you. What about young Absalom? The king demanded. Is he all right? Ahimaaz replied, when Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion, but I didn't know what was happening. Wait here, the king told him, so Ahimaaz stepped aside. Then the man from Cush arrived and said, I have good news for you, my lord, the king. Today the Lord has rescued you from all those who rebelled against you. What about young Absalom? The king demanded. Is he all right? And the Cushite replied, may all your enemies, both now and in the future, be as that young man is. The king was overcome with emotion. He went up to his room over the gateway and burst into tears. And as he went, he cried, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I could have died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Chapter 19. Joab rebukes the king. Word soon reached Joab that the king was weeping and mourning for Absalom. As the troops heard of the king's deep grief for his son, the joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. They crept back into the city as though they were ashamed and had been beaten in battle. The king covered his face with his hands and kept on weeping. Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Then Joab went to the king's room and said to him, we saved your life today, and the lives of your sons, your daughters, and your wives and concubines. Yet you act like this, making us feel ashamed, as though we had done something wrong. You seem to love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that we mean nothing to you. If Absalom had lived and all of us had died, you would be pleased. Now go out there and congratulate the troops, for I swear by the Lord that if you don't, not a single one of them will remain here tonight. Then you will be worse off than you have ever been. So the king went out and sat at the city gate, and as the news spread throughout the city that he was there, everyone went to him. Meanwhile, the Israelites who supported Absalom had fled to their homes. And throughout the tribes of Israel there was much discussion and arguments going on. The people were saying, the king saved us from our enemies, the Philistines, but Absalom chased him out of the country. Now Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, is dead. Let's ask David to come back and be our king again. Then King David sent Zadok and Abiathar the priests to say to the leaders of Judah, why are you the last ones to reinstate the king? For I have heard that all Israel is ready, and only you are holding out. You are my relatives, my own tribe, my own flesh and blood. Why are you the last ones to welcome me back? And David told them to tell Amasa, since you are my nephew, may God strike me dead if I do not appoint you as commander of my army in place of Joab. Then Amasa convinced all the leaders of Judah, and they responded unanimously. They sent word to the king, return to us and bring back all those who are with you. David's return to Jerusalem. So the king started back to Jerusalem, and when he arrived at the Jordan River, the people of Judah came to Gilgal to meet him, and escorted him across the river. Then Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin, hurried across with the men of Judah to welcome King David. 1,000 men from the tribe of Benjamin were with him, including Zibiah, the servant of Saul, and Zibiah's 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed down to the Jordan to arrive ahead of the king. They all crossed the ford and worked hard ferrying the king's household across the river, helping them in every way they could. David's mercy to Shimei. As the king was about to cross the river, Shimei fell down before him. My lord the king, please forgive me, he pleaded. Forget the terrible thing I did when you left Jerusalem. I know how much I have sinned. That is why I have come here today. The very first person in all Israel to greet you. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, Shimei should die, for he cursed the Lord's anointed king. What am I going to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? David exclaimed. This is not a day for execution, but for celebration. I am once again the king of Israel. Then turning to Shimei, David vowed, your life will be spared. David's kindness to Mephibosheth. Now Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, arrived from Jerusalem to meet the king. He had not washed his feet or clothes, nor trimmed his beard since the day the king left Jerusalem. Why didn't you come with me, Mephibosheth? The king asked him. Mephibosheth replied, My lord the king, my servant, Zibiah deceived me. I told him, Saddle my donkey so I can go with the king, for as you know I am crippled. Zibiah has slandered me by saying that I refuse to come, but I know that you are like an angel of God, so do what you think is best. All my relatives and I could accept only death from you, my lord, but instead you have honored me among those who eat at your table, so how can I complain? All right, David replied. My decision is that you and Zibiah will divide your land equally between you. Give him all of it, Mephibosheth said. I am content just to have you back again, my lord. David's kindness to Barzillai. Barzillai of Gilead now arrived from Jerusalem to conduct the king across the Jordan. He was very old, about 80, and very wealthy. He was the only one who had provided food for the king during his stay at Mahanaim. Come across with me and live in Jerusalem, the king said to Barzillai. I will take care of you there. No, he replied, I am far too old for that. I am 80 years old today, and I can no longer enjoy anything. Food and wine are no longer tasty. I cannot hear the musicians as they play. I would only be a burden to my lord the king. Just to go across the river with you is all the honor I need. Then let me return again to die in my own town, where my father and mother are buried. But here is my son Kimham. Let him go with you and receive whatever good things you want to give him. Good, the king agreed. Kimham will go with me, and I will do for him whatever I would have done for you. So all the people crossed the Jordan with the king, and David had blessed and embraced him. Barzillai returned to his own home. The king then went on to Gilgal, taking Kimham with him. All the army of Judah and half the army of Israel escorted him across the river. An argument over the king. But the men of Israel complained to the king that the men of Judah had gotten to do most of the work in helping him cross the Jordan. Why not? The men of Judah replied. The king is one of our own tribe. Why should this make you angry? We have charged him nothing, and he hasn't fed us or even given us gifts. But there are 10 tribes in Israel, the others replied, so we have 10 times as much right to do the king as you do. Why did you treat us with such contempt? Remember, we were the first to speak of bringing him back to be our king again. The argument continued back and forth, and the men of Judah were very harsh in their replies. Well, thank you for joining me today. We'll continue on with chapter 20 tomorrow. I hope you have a great day and a blessed day, and I'll see you then. Bye.